are you suggesting that this amendment will now create one-man rule in Pakistan, and that one man is not the Prime Minister, that one man is the Army Chief Field Marshal Munir?
That is the criticism that is being made, that in fact is what is happening. The government would deny that and say that this is merely a reform measure to improve the quality of governance, and that no such thing is intended, and that everything, and since the amendment has been passed and therefore it's part of the constitution, and so whatever the state of affairs in Pakistan is, it is embraced by the constitution as it stands now amended, and therefore it is constitutional rule and not one-man rule. But the vast majority of informed opinion in Pakistan would not easily buy that, if at all.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me. Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. The 27th Amendment to Pakistan's constitution has been passed by both chambers of the country's parliament and now awaits the president's assent. It promotes the army chief to the new post of Chief of Defence Forces and gives him authority over the Navy and Air Force. The constitutional amendment also creates a new federal constitutional court, thus demoting the Supreme Court, which will now be limited to civilian and commercial cases. What is the justification for these changes? How powerful do they make the country's army chief? And how much damage do they do to Pakistan's existing judiciary? And how are they viewed by the Pakistani people? Joining me from Islamabad is Pakistan's former ambassador to the USA, China, and Russia, and former High Commissioner to India, Ashraf Jehangir Qazi. Mr. Qazi, how do you view the 27th Amendment to your country's constitution, which has been passed by both houses of your National Assembly and now awaits President Zardari's signature? It elevates the Army Chief to Chief of Defence Forces, giving him power over the Navy and Air Force and immunity from prosecution for life. It also creates a new federal constitutional court, thereby demoting your Supreme Court, which will now only hear commercial and civilian matters. How do you view this sweeping amendment?
Nice to meet you again, Karan, on TV. This particular amendment was preceded by the 26th Amendment, about which I had written some months back, describing it as one of the blackest days, if not the blackest day, in Pakistan's constitutional history, indeed political history. This 27th Amendment is a further development, and in fact, it's a far more serious setback to the rule of law, to the rule of the constitution, to democracy in Pakistan, and it has been received by, I would imagine, a very wide spectrum of opinion, informed opinion, as a matter of grave concern, which sort of undermines political stability and civilian supremacy in Pakistan. So now the government has projected it as not any kind of takeover, but as a reform measure in order to bring rule closer to the people. But almost the overwhelming majority of independent legal opinion and indeed political opinion is quite the opposite, that this is a major attempt at substituting hybrid rule, which is a euphemism for military rule, in place of civilian supremacy and democratic rule. So it has opened up a new chapter of political instability in Pakistan, which would impact on our prospects for economic growth and getting out of the economic difficulties we are currently in.
Let me ask you, what is the government's justification? What is the raison d'etre for these changes? They are pretty sweeping, but what is the justification for them?
Well, I'm sure you'll have an opportunity to talk with senior officials of the government of Pakistan who might sort of, present their case far better than I can on their behalf, especially since I am a great critic of what has happened right now. And I believe that I've served my country as a diplomat. I believe I'm less than nobody as far as patriotism is concerned. And I feel, along with many, many people, very, very depressed about this development. So I'm not the best person to sort of put forward.
No, I know. I'm not asking you to speak on behalf of the government. I'm asking you to tell me what the government says of itself. Why has the government done this?
Well, their argument is that it's going to bring increased efficiency and that it preserves the essence of the previous of the Constitution. It is just these are reform measures in order to improve governance and bring governance closer to the people and remove some of the inefficiencies which had plagued the judicial system and indeed the political system. Along those lines, they have sought to project their case for this particular amendment. But what has happened now is that the Constitution has actually been used against itself. I mean, the Constitution is being amended so as to sort of deny the basic structure of the Constitution. Now, the basic structure of the Constitution is something which may not exist in terms of specific articles, but the fact that there are three pillars of governance, the executive, the
Are you saying that the basic structure of the Constitution has been damaged by these amendments?
The majority of legal opinion with which I would agree is that the basic structure of the Constitution has been demolished. And in the words of one of our most prominent journalists, the Constitution has been murdered. So I mean that I might not go as far as that, but it has been severely damaged, and this is an enormous setback. And the Constitution, in that sense, has been violated like never before. Even taking into account previous martial laws, where the Constitution was set aside, now the Constitution has been amended to work against itself.
These are pretty major changes. Should they have been pushed through at the speed with which they have? I gather barely a day's debate in each House of Parliament and the amendments have been pushed through, and the opposition virtually boycotted it.
Absolutely. And one of our most respected justices has said that any change of this nature should have been preceded by a very detailed national consultation process, both inside and outside Parliament, as a preliminary measure to sort of introducing these possible changes so that a national consensus could be developed, or support or debate could sort of ensue, so that public opinion would be able to make an informed judgment. On the contrary, this was done in secrecy, and then it was leaked to the media, and the government then came out and confirmed the leak. So this was done very, very secretly, very rapidly, which suggests that the government itself was aware that public opinion would be very adverse to these changes. So it's been presented as a fait accompli rather than as a proposal.
Let's first talk about the elevation of the army chief. Will this strengthen the grip of the army, or what's called the establishment in your country, over civilian rulers, making Field Marshal Munir effectively the most powerful person in the country, regardless of the fact you also have a civilian prime minister?
Yes, of course, the civilian prime minister for a long time has been considered a subordinate to the army chief, and now the army chief has enabled a change in the constitution which would legitimize his supremacy, the supremacy of one-man rule, which goes against the very ethos or essence of the constitution, and often the case is made informally that this is a hybrid governance. Well, hybrid governance has no legitimacy according to the Constitution of Pakistan. The Constitution of Pakistan is very, very clear. The military is a subordinate institution, and since many years it has exercised enormous power in Pakistan. Many would argue to the detriment of Pakistan's interests, but this is the first time that the Constitution is being changed to legitimize that situation. And that is why a lot of lawyers, in fact, the vast majority of lawyers, are extremely offended by this development and have made their views public, including very prominent justices like Justice Athar Minullah and Justice Mansoor Ali Shah. And a whole lot of, legal associations.
Can I interrupt and ask, are you suggesting that this amendment will now create one-man rule in Pakistan, and that one man is not the Prime Minister, that one man is the Army Chief Field Marshal Munir?
That is the criticism that is being made, that in fact is what is happening. The government would deny that and say that this is merely a reform measure to improve the quality of governance, and that no such thing is intended, and that everything, and since the amendment has been passed, and therefore it's part of the Constitution, and so whatever the state of affairs in Pakistan is, it is embraced by the Constitution as it stands now amended, and therefore it is constitutional rule and not one-man rule. But the vast majority of informed opinion in Pakistan would not easily buy that, if at all.
Tell me, how do you have any sense of how this amendment increasing the role of the army chief is viewed by the Navy and the Air Force? How is it viewed by junior officers in the army? Are they all in support of it, or do they have reservations which they're now hesitant to express in public?
Once again, I must quickly add that you would have to consult with them. They have not made any public statement, and in fact, there's been a display of unity of command, etc. But of course, privately, there would be concerns because the other two arms of the military forces have never been involved in politics directly to the extent that the army has, and so what the private opinions of particular officers may be, one might speculate about that, but I couldn't sort of myself claim to have any personal knowledge of that.
Tell me, let's come to the new Federal Constitutional Court. Do you have any sense of how judges of the Supreme Court have viewed the demotion of the Supreme Court and the creation of the new Federal Constitutional Court? Because now the Supreme Court will be limited to civilian and commercial cases. Important political cases, constitutional cases will go to the new court instead.
Yes, now the Supreme Court of Pakistan has in effect been, not formally, but in reality, it is being made subordinate to the Federal Constitutional Court. Now, there are traditions in Europe, particularly where Federal Constitutional Courts do exist, but that is because they've had a separate legal tradition whereby constitutional courts don't adjudicate on constitutional questions and all, but that is a civil law tradition. But we have inherited from the Brits, along with India and other Commonwealth countries, the common law tradition, whereby the Supreme Court is not only the guardian of the Constitution, the interpreter of the Constitution, but it is also at the same time the Supreme Appellate Court. So it combines in itself both functions, and to split those functions goes against the tradition, the legal tradition that has prevailed in Pakistan and the subcontinent for the past 200 years or more.
Now, Pakistan used to have a very powerful Supreme Court, which on at least 2 occasions has acted to dismiss sitting prime ministers. What are the chances that the new Federal Constitutional Court, where judges will be directly appointed by the government, will ever exercise similar powers?
Well, that's a concern amongst many people in Pakistan, that the Constitutional Court, Federal Constitutional Court, will in effect be made, it's not formally being made superior to the Supreme Court of Pakistan, but if you study the details in practice, it turns out to be the institution that will really be more authoritative. As far as the interpretation of the Constitution, in fact, yes, because the Supreme Court will be reduced to an appellate court, and therefore it becomes in that sense subordinate to the Federal Constitutional Court as far as constitutional questions are concerned. So the Federal Constitutional Court, the majority of independent public opinion is that it would not be independent itself. It would come under the influence of the military, and not formally once again, but in practice, and that would sort of impact negatively on the rule of law. This is the government, I might hasten to add, would not agree with this at all, but this is the informed public opinion, and particularly expert legal opinion is overwhelmingly of this view, although there is...
How have these constitutional changes been viewed by your media? You have a media that is often very critical. You yourself are often in your articles for Dawn very critical of the system in Pakistan. How has the media viewed these very sweeping major constitutional changes?
Well, the media in Pakistan operates under a lot of constraints, but nonetheless, it has been reading between the lines and even quite openly. The major newspapers, especially in the English language, but also the other newspapers, vernacular newspapers, have expressed grave reservations along the lines that I've been making to you.
And finally, Mr. Qazi, where do these constitutional changes leave Pakistan's democracy? You've often in your own articles argued that Pakistan's democracy is anyway weak and infirm. How much weaker, how much more infirm has it now become?
Democracy is the bug which has bitten into the politics of most Commonwealth countries, particularly subcontinental countries, including Pakistan. And democracy is hugely threatened by the latest development. There is a body of opinion which holds that Pakistan belongs to the Middle East and South Asia, and in South Asia the democratic tradition is not as strong as in the West, and there is a misinterpretation of Islamic injunctions that it might sort of legitimate the kind of changes that have taken place. But in fact, the Islamic jurisprudence is very much against anyone, including the Khalifa, that's the Caliph, being independent of the Qazis judging the legitimacy of his actions. No one under Islamic traditions can be independent of the prevailing law, which in Islamic societies has been historically Sharia, and therefore the idea that anybody or any institution can be above the law and in and of itself a source of the law is considered un-Islamic and indeed unconstitutional and undemocratic.
You began by saying that you consider this the blackest day for Pakistan's constitutional history. Those are very strong words. You stand by them.
Oh, yes, I do stand by them. And I hope that better sense will prevail and that we shall see much better days ahead.
When you say better sense will prevail, are you suggesting that the president won't sign this amendment, or are you suggesting that a future government one day will reverse what's happened?
I'm hoping that those who make decisions now might pause and reflect and ponder, because I assume everyone at heart wants the good of his own country.
But isn't it too late to pause? Both houses with two-thirds majorities have passed these amendments. It only needs President Zardari's signature to come into effect, and that presumably is taken for granted.
Changes take place all the time. And if anything has happened which should not have happened, and there is a willingness to sort of agonize over it, as a patriotic Pakistani, I believe any good things can yet happen.
All right, Mr. Qazi, there's always a case of hope against hope. Osip Mandelstam was famous for that, but it does to the outside world feel as if this is hope against hope. I thank you for the time you've given me. Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch The Interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.